The story begins by introducing us to Alan, who is writing an apology letter to a girl named Lydia. He says that, at the moment, he is on a train heading north of the kingdom. And as the news must have already reached her, Lydia probably already knows. Alan failed the exam to become a court sorcerer. At this point, we go back a few hours in time. We see Alan's teacher with an expression reminiscent of disappointed parents looking at their child's report card at the end of the school year. He can't believe Alan failed, both the written and practical tests. Surprised, he asks if Alan has any explanation. Alan, unfazed, simply responds with a dry no and completely changes the subject. He asks if the teacher knows of any available jobs, since he spent all his money on the little tiger and has no way to pay for the trip back home. The teacher, who already knows that Alan always sends the little he earns to help his family, praises the noble gesture but warns him he needs to start thinking a little more about himself. Then, the teacher says he has the perfect job for him. A friend is looking for a private tutor for his daughter, and although it's a temporary job only until spring, the pay is excellent. Alan gets excited about the opportunity, thinking it would be an easy job. But even before he can accept, the teacher is already on the phone with his friend, confirming Alan's presence as the new tutor. As soon as he hangs up, the teacher reveals the student will be Tina, daughter of Duke Howard, head of one of the 4 great ducal houses of the kingdom. She is supposed to enroll at the Royal Academy in the spring. Alan reflects on the weight of the responsibility, but remembers that Lydia is also a duke's daughter, so he already has experience with this type of people. As he already expected the answer, the teacher reveals he bought Alan's train ticket in advance. Alan is outraged, realizing it was all a setup, and he walked right into it. Back to the present, Alan looks out the train window and wonders what kind of ordeal awaits him. Shortly after, upon getting off at the station, he is greeted by Graham, the head butler of the Howard family, and by an adorable little girl named Ellie, supposedly a maid in training. Graham takes them to the car, and upon opening the door, apologizes. The car is a bit tight, Fiat Moby style. Then he asks if Alan would mind letting Miss Ellie sit on his lap. Alan tries to refuse, but Ellie, with that innocent girl look that's anything but innocent, says she doesn't mind. With no way out, Alan ends up with a beautiful girl on his lap. He soon notices something odd. The ribbon in her hair is thin and finely decorated. Too luxurious for a simple maid. He begins to suspect Ellie isn't who she claims to be. On the way, Alan notices Ellie is cold. Without thinking twice, he wraps his scarf around her and casts a spell that regulates the car's temperature, making the environment cozy. Ellie is impressed. Upon arriving at the mansion, Alan helps her out of the car with all elegance and calls her Your Highness. Surprised, Ellie asks when he realized. Alan calmly replies, from the beginning. Her appearance didn't match that of a servant. The clothes were the wrong size, and the white ribbon in her hair was embroidered with gold thread, something rare, even in the capital. Graham is impressed by Alan's perception. Ellie, or rather Tina, runs off, embarrassed, still with Alan's scarf around her neck. Inside the mansion, Graham calls the real Ellie, Tina's personal maid, to take Alan's luggage. But the girl turns out to be clumsy and trips, nearly falling. Alan catches her by reflex. Out of nowhere, he starts patting the girl's head, leaving Ellie blushing and not knowing where to hide her face. Graham, watching everything with a scary aura, comments, "You're exactly as the professor described." Intrigued, Alan asks what the professor said about him, and Graham, with a sinister smile, replies, "That you have a way with lowlies." Trying to defend himself, Alan says he just has a knack for dealing with younger people, but let's be honest, that excuse doesn't hold up very well. Next, Alan is taken to meet the head of House Howard, the imposing Duke Walter. Without mincing words, Walter says he personally consulted Alan's professor, who claimed that Alan was the only one capable of carrying out the task. Alan, surprised, replies that the professor only mentioned he'd be Tina's tutor to help her get into the Royal Academy. Walter, with an expression of pure disappointment, reveals Alan's real job, to make Tina give up on entering the academy. Alan is completely lost, and Walter decides to explain more calmly, starting with something he calls historical context. He tells the story of the Howard lineage. According to him, thanks to their decisive role in the founding of the kingdom, 4 great families were granted vast territories, one in each cardinal direction. To this day, each one governs their region on behalf of the crown. Their deep ties to the royal family earned them the title of Highness instead of Your Grace. The Howards rule the north, a harsh, cold, and unforgiving land. For generations, this family has prided itself on its military strength, raising powerful warriors and mages. But that tradition is now at risk. Tina's mother died when she was very young, and Walter only had 2 daughters. The eldest, Stella, did enroll in the Royal Academy, but she shows no magical talent whatsoever, and he doubts she'll inherit the Howard family's ultimate spell. The youngest, Tina, has the opposite problem. She possesses an absurd amount of mana, but can't cast even the simplest spell. Many renowned mages have examined her. None could explain why. Walter continues, Tina has an unshakable sense of justice. As a descendant of House Howard, she believes it's her duty to study magic and swordsmanship at the Royal Academy. But there are other paths. Paths Walter believes are more valuable. That last line intrigues Alan. He He asks what these other paths might be. Walter then takes him to a massive greenhouse. Inside, he reveals that all the plants there were cultivated by Tina. After reading old books from her late mother, she began studying ways to make those species grow in the arid northern lands. Her research is a priceless resource for the duchy, and Walter wants her to continue with it. He believes it will bring more benefits to the family than any spell. Alan understands the Duke's feelings, but firmly states that Tina should have the freedom to choose her own path. So, he proposes, if Tina can master magic to the point of meeting the Royal Academy's standards, would Walter allow her to enroll? Reluctantly, but honestly, the Duke agrees. Alan is thrilled. Teaching a girl with so much mana yet unable to cast a single spell is just the kind of puzzle he loves to solve. Soon after, everyone gathers for dinner. Unlike other noble houses, here everyone, nobles and servants, dines together like one big family. That's when Tina and Ellie enter the hall. Walter officially introduces Alan as Tina's new tutor. She politely introduces herself and says she's heard a lot about him. Alan returns the kindness, but looks directly at the real Ellie and with a hint of irony says, "We've met before, haven't we? Were you cold in the car?" Ellie is completely thrown off. Tina, trying to change the subject, invites Alan to follow her. She has many questions. Before they leave, the Duke formally introduces Ellie. She is the only granddaughter of head butler Graham. Her family, the Walkers, has served the Howards for generations. And Walter asks Alan to teach her magic as well, so she can accompany Tina to the Royal Academy. Ellie shyly apologizes. She says she's not very good with magic, and would probably just be a bother. Alan, serious, looks her in the eyes and asks, "What do you want to do?" Ellie hesitates, as if waiting for orders, but Alan insists. He wants to know what she truly desires, deep in her heart. This time, she opens up. She says she does want to enter the academy. She wants to go with Tina because she truly loves her. As a friend, as a maid, as a sister. Alan smiles. He gently pats her head and says he'll help her. Ellie takes the chance to ask him to call her by her first name, that classic Japanese tradition. Tina, of course, makes the same request. The next day, Alan goes to the greenhouse where Tina's research lab is. It's time for the first lesson. As he approaches, Tina firmly asks him not to lie to her, and even if it hurts, not to go easy on her because she's prepared. So he starts by preparing a written test for her, since entering the Royal Academy requires more than just knowing how to cast spells. Shortly after, while grading the test, Alan is completely stunned. Tina got a perfect score. Every answer, flawless. He even comments that she could rival none other than Lydia. And then, Alan decides to tell her who Lydia really is, and why she's the great curse of his life. Lydia is the eldest daughter of Duke Leinster, the Guardian of the South. The typical fiery redhead with broken magic, brilliant at everything she does, and completely obsessed with him. Alan jokes that academically Tina is on the same level as the red-haired beast. The next day he shows Tina the test and confidently states, the theoretical exam of the Royal Academy won't be a problem for her. But now, it's time for practice. Tina gets discouraged. She says she's tried countless times, with various tutors. She's never managed to cast even a spark. They all gave up. They all left, disappointed. Alan understands the feeling well. He's disappointed people recently too. That surprises Tina. After all, her teacher described him as a prodigy, the brain of the sword lady Lydia. But Alan corrects her. People only overestimate him because he's the only one who can handle Lydia's whims. His mana is below average. He believes he only got into the university to keep Lydia under control. Then he asks, Tina, do you really want to enter the academy? Tina takes a deep breath and answers from the heart. She says she doesn't want to go out of duty or obligation. She loves taking care of plants, loves her research. But the real reason goes back to her childhood. When she was little, her mother used to read her picture books about heroes and incredible magic. Ever since then, she's dreamed of casting one of those grand spells, like the ones in the stories that made her eyes light up. Alan is moved. He tells her that today, no one can cast those ancient grand spells anymore. But if that's Tina's true wish, then together, they'll find a way. At that moment, Ellie enters carrying some candles, but trips. Alan catches her reflexively, and with a smooth motion, uses magic to levitate the candles to the table, not dropping a single one. Tina watches, and feels that basic jealousy. It bothers her to see the two so close. With a strained smile, she asks them to separate. And so begins the first practical lesson. Tina explains what she knows about magic. There are 7 elements: fire, water, earth, lightning, wind, light, and darkness, and that each person is born with an affinity for one or two of these elements. Her family, for example, has affinity with water and wind, and they're known for casting ice magic. Alan praises her but offers a new perspective. He explains that when he heated the car on the way, he used fire, water, and wind together. Even though water and fire are opposites, he managed to combine the two. In other words, maybe this idea of natural element is more flexible than people think. And he challenges the girls to try using all elements, keeping an open mind. As the first exercise, they must interact with the candles using the 7 elements. Ellie goes first. Her affinity is with fire and wind. She lights a candle with a steady flame and then blows a gentle breeze. Alan smiles. She has a bright future. She can handle 2 elements with finesse. Now it's Tina's turn. She channels mana perfectly. The flow is flawless. The magic formula is correct. But at the last second, the magic just dissipates. Tina lowers her head, apologizing. But Alan encourages her. He says the next step will be understanding why her magic isn't activating, because she's got more than enough potential. Then, to demonstrate, he performs a basic spell. But this is Alan, right? The guy conjures beautiful flowers, each representing one of the 7 elements, above the candles. A burst of colors and shapes that leaves the 2 girls completely mesmerized. In his thoughts, he reflects that once you learn the right way, everything flows. Even he, the former incompetent, now masters this with ease. The scene cuts to Lydia, who just received Alan's letter. And, as always, she is furious. How dare he leave without asking permission? Her little pet dared to slip off the leash, and she vows she will not forgive him. The next day, Alan gets ready to give the girls a major magic lesson. He starts with a question. Why do you think people are able to use magic? Tina raises her hand and gives the answer. Because we have mana, and learn to control it through study and practice. Alan confirms she's right. Science has advanced, and the number of mages has grown, he says. But fewer and fewer people can use powerful spells. The great families became famous for their unique spells, the Flaming Bird, the Ice Wolf, the Storm Dragon, and the Thunder Tiger. But today, almost no one can summon them anymore. And their power has been declining over time. Tina is shocked. 200 years of research and reform since the Demon King's War, she says. Was it all for nothing? The teacher assures her it wasn't, but admits that they traded quality for quantity. He believes our connection to magic comes from invisible elemental spirits. Tina pushes back, saying that tests have already disproven that. Fire spells, for example, don't get stronger near volcanoes. In some cases, even water spells come out stronger. Alan smiles, impressed by her knowledge. He says, those tests don't prove anything if we can't measure the power of spirits. Maybe the elements don't even matter much to them. Even so, most spells nowadays focus on just one type of element. Then they move on to the practical part. The teacher asks Ellie, who already masters fire and wind magic, to try using a new kind of spell. She struggles at first but can't do it. He encourages her to try again, and then she succeeds. It's Tina's turn. She tries, but nothing happens. Alan tells her not to give up, but she fails again. That leaves Tina really upset and down. That night, we see Alan in the library lighting a small lamp, looking for a book. He gets excited. These books are national treasures. He believes Tina does have mana, but something is blocking it. Suddenly, someone enters. He quickly extinguishes the light. Tina and her maid appear. Tina picks up a book on magical sciences and dives into reading. The maid asks, "So, what do you think of the new teacher?" Tina replies, "He's very kind, but he has a mischievous side." The maid reminds her it's time to go and leaves to lock up. As Tina heads out, the maid speaks out loud to the empty room. "I know you're in there." Alan appears, surprised she detected him. She introduces herself. "I'm a maid of this house, Shelley Walker. Forgive my boldness, but I must speak about Lady Tina. She's incredibly smart and hardworking, but all the previous tutors gave up on her just because they thought she had no magical talent. That hurt her deeply. She cried in secret but never gave up on her dream of entering the Royal Academy. Ever since you and Lady Lydia arrived, she's been so happy. She looks up to you both. Please, help her." Alan promises he'll do everything he can for her. The scene cuts to Alan with the girls. Tina gets upset when she sees him with Ellie. Alan tries to explain, "I just helped her pick some vegetables." But Tina gets irritated and argues with Ellie. He separates them. "You two are like sisters fighting." After that, he says training will resume later. Shortly after, they return to practical training. Each girl places a hand on a cat, and Tina feels the mana flowing inside her. "You succeeded in the dark mana test," the teacher says. She tries to activate a spell, aiming at the candles, but fails. The tutor says, "There'd be no reason for me to be here if you nailed it on the first try." When it's Tina's turn, she also tries the spell and fails, getting frustrated. The tutor, however, tells her to stay calm and not let it shake her. Then, he shows how it's done, conjuring a little kitten in the palm of his hand. The two girls are enchanted and both want to pet the little creature, but before they can start arguing over it, the tutor summons one cat for each of them. That night, a letter arrives for Alan, sent by Lydia. The content makes it clear she's furious that he went to Howard's. She writes that she's tried teaching Tina many times before and never got good results, so he's going to struggle too. "Sure, it might work if it's you," she admits, but says that's completely beside the point. "Don't even think about trying anything with anyone else besides me. I know you're hiding something." She goes on, "Since when do you keep secrets from your lady? But fine, I'll see you at the Royal Academy entrance exam. If you run, I'll hunt you to the ends of the world, chop you into pieces, and burn the rest." She ends by saying she doesn't demand a letter every day, but expects at least one every 2 weeks. When Alan finishes reading, his maid asks what Lady Lydia wanted. He replies that she's mad because he doesn't write often. The maid finds it cute, thinks Lydia must care deeply for him, and probably feels lonely without him around. Later, he continues training Tina and Ellie. He notices the new magic formula is starting to show results, with Ellie making more progress. When Tina tries to use her magic, she manages to create a small bit of ice. Later that night, Alan is leaning over books, reflecting on Tina's spell. It seems like just one step is missing for it to activate. Since modern theories aren't helping, he decides to dig into ancient records. Alan leaves his room and runs into Ellie. She thanks him for everything he's doing. Then she shares that her grandparents asked to see her earlier. She knows they love her more than anything. Not just because she reminds them of their late daughter and son-in-law, but because she's family. They hugged me so tightly, she says. And ever since, she's had a strange feeling because it came so suddenly. She wanted to understand, and they said they needed to talk to Alan about her. Alan responds that he just gave her grandparents a bit of advice. He then recalls a moment with Ellie's grandfather, who asked Alan to look after her. She's talented, the grandfather explained, but she struggles to use that talent in a way that lets her face the world safely. I want her to know how important she is to us. Having a family that loves you is the greatest support there is. Alan related to that, since his own family had been his foundation through many phases of life. Ellie is touched. She shares that she lost her parents as a child and came to live with the Howards after the family took her in. She remembers the day she arrived. A little girl tried to follow her everywhere. That girl was Lady Tina. She had also lost her mother around that time. She continues, even being the heir to my surname, I felt like nothing I did ever worked. Before I realized it, Lady Tina had already surpassed me with ease. Afraid I'd be left behind, I gathered the courage and asked the Duke to let me try for the Royal Academy too. Alan praises her for forging her own path. You're brave and very talented, he says. And you're not alone. We're here with you. Later, we see Ellie successfully using her power to light candles. Alan asks her to try the other elements. Ellie admits she's afraid of lightning and light, but wants to try with his help, believing that with the spirits by her side, she'll master it quickly. Alan is delighted by her progress. She's doing very well and may soon be ready to use magic jewels. Now it's Tina's turn. She tries to use her power once more, but fails to ignite the flames. Alan reassures her, saying they still have time, and will try a different spell formula. All we can do is keep testing our theory, he says. Later, Alan goes to the Duke and tells him that despite Tina having an absurd amount of mana, he can't guarantee she'll pass the entrance exam. He suggests she not attempt it. He argues that it would be irresponsible to place her in the magic program if she can't even cast a spell, but he defends that the Academy should consider her intelligence as a valid reason for acceptance. The Duke says he understands Alan's point of view, but reminds him that the noble world doesn't make things easy, something Alan knows all too well. A girl from House Howard with no magical talent would become a target for every fool at the Academy. I don't want Tina to suffer even more than she already has, he says. If she doesn't improve, you'll do what I asked. Alan tries to disagree, but the Duke cuts him off. I'm counting on you. Then we see Tina trying once again to use magic, and failing. Alan approaches and says he'll stay with her during training. She accepts and keeps practicing. I don't understand anything, Alan thinks. Lately, her spells disappear so quickly he can't even study them properly. It seems like something is rejecting the magic, but he can't find any mistakes in the formulas. I don't know why her spells aren't working, but there has to be a way to help. Later, Alan goes to sleep and wakes up the next day exhausted from staying up all night. As he leaves his room, he finds Tina asleep at a table. She also stayed up late practicing. She wakes up when she senses Alan nearby and sees the book in his hand, realizing he was reading because of her. Tina comments that she knows he stayed up all night, even skipped breakfast because of it, and that he keeps creating new formulas to help with training. Alan tells her not to worry. He loves reading and enjoys adjusting spells, though he admits he's more tired than usual today. Tina is deeply shaken, thinking he must be angry with her and blaming her for the lack of results. She feels useless, says she has no talent and can't cast anything. Alan tries to comfort her, but Tina begins to cry, feeling completely powerless. Through tears, she confesses that she has deep respect and affection for him, even love. But every time he praises Ellie in front of her, or every time she sees Ellie progressing while she's stuck, dark feelings rise inside her. Suddenly, a massive aura of mana explodes around Tina, freezing everything around her. Alan has no idea what's going on. Ellie appears and Alan tells her to stay back. Tina becomes enveloped in a layer of ice, overwhelmingly powerful. Tina's mana is completely out of control, something that had never happened before, no matter how many times they'd tried. Alan thinks, why now, of all times? If this keeps going, she's in real danger. Ellie, still near the door and farther from the storm, shouts Tina's name, trying to help somehow. But Alan, his voice firm, tells her to run and get her grandfather, Mr. Graham. Maybe he can do something. Ellie doesn't hesitate and dashes off. Meanwhile, Alan tries to cast a spell to contain the blizzard before it turns into a disaster. But his magic doesn't even scratch the storm. He feels pressure in his chest, a strange sensation, as if something inside him is being squeezed. There's something seriously wrong here. Something I haven't figured out yet, he realizes, thinking he might have to resort to a drastic solution. Something he once swore never to use again. He calls out to Tina again, almost begging her to respond if she can hear him. Inside a kind of ice dome, Tina hears his voice, dazed, and shouts back, confused, "What's happening?" Relieved to hear her, Alan urges her to stay calm and explains her mana is out of control. "If this continues, Tina, you could burn through all your mana. Or worse, you might not survive." Terrified, she asks what to do. Alan says he'll use a spell to link his mana to hers to try and stabilize the situation. Still in shock, Tina asks if that's really possible. He nods seriously. "I've done it before. It's not going to be pleasant, but trust me." She takes a deep breath, agrees, and says she's in his hands. Alan raises his hand as if to say it's time, and begins casting the linking spell. He reflects that handing over control of your mana is like putting your life in someone else's hands, just like someone once trusted him with theirs. Now he's risking everything to save Tina. As the spell takes effect, he dives into the chaos of her mana, searching for her. When he finally finds her, his eyes glow, and lightning dances around the magic. He's stunned by how much mana she has. Her power is as great as Lydia's, maybe even greater, he thinks, surprised by her raw potential. Suddenly, Alan begins to feel Tina's thoughts and emotions, as if he's inside her mind. She's blaming herself, calling herself the useless daughter of the Howards, a family of renowned mages. Through tears, she says she never should have been born, that she's a disgrace to the family. She cries out for her mother, her father, begging for help. Hearing all this, Alan calls to her firmly, and she responds, as if his voice sparked something inside her. At that moment, a light appears, and out of nowhere, an ice bird forms behind Tina and flies off. The storm begins to lose strength, and Alan wonders if that icy creature is trying to help. Seizing the opening, he summons a firebird. Not perfect, but it'll do. The flaming bird charges at the ice walls, trapping Tina, melting everything and finally setting her free. The storm fades, and the air returns to calm. Tina and Alan lock eyes, and she lets out a relieved smile, like a weight's been lifted off her shoulders. Alan steps forward, pulls her into a tight hug and sighs, happy to see her okay. As he hugs her, he notices ice particles floating in the air. Looking up, he sees the ice bird flying and hears a woman's voice echo, "At last, I found a key," before disappearing. Curious, Alan asks Tina if, during the storm, while they were connected, she saw or heard anything strange. She shakes her head, still dazed, and says, "No, I only heard you, Master." He realizes he was the only one who witnessed that strange phenomenon. Blushing, Tina looks at him and awkwardly comments that feeling him connected to her mana was weird, like they were one. Alan gives a slight smile, but then notices he hasn't undone the magical link yet. With a gesture, he dissolves the connection, blushing slightly as he says, "It's all right now? You're safe." He gets up, already thinking about finding Ellie to let her know everything's fine. But before he can take a step, Tina grabs his sleeve, holding it tightly, and almost pleads, "Don't go, stay here with me." In that moment, all she wanted was to have him there, her master, without sharing his attention. Alan understands what she's feeling, gives her a gentle smile and hugs her again, letting her calm down. Soon after, Ellie comes running with Mr. Graham, crying out for them, eyes full of tears. She throws herself onto Tina, hugging her tightly, relieved and worried at the same time. Still nervous, the girls insist Alan lie down on a nearby bed, thinking he looks too exhausted. He tries to reassure them, saying, "It's nothing, just a little fatigue." Ellie rushes off to make him some herbal tea, while Tina, still worried, asks if he's feeling like that because of the mana link. Alan smiles and reassures her, "Don't worry, I'm fine." He jokes that she must have been surprised by the connection, since it lets you feel the other person's thoughts and emotions. Tina blushes again, remembering how in the middle of the chaos he called her "Your Highness" in his mind. Annoyed, she complains, "I told you not to call me that." Alan laughs and says he learned a lot from that spell. For example, that he can control the mana of whoever he's linked to, but that the person's will affects how much power they can use, and that after the first connection, it's easier to reconnect in the future. Tina, curious, asks if he's ever done that with her sister, Karen, or with Lady Lydia, in a moment of desperation. Alan grows serious and explains that linking someone's mana is like holding their life in your hands. "It's way too dangerous, Tina. I can use the other person's mana as if it were my own, but it's not something to do lightly." He asks firmly, "This stays between us, okay? Not even Ellie can know." She smiles, happy to share a secret with her master, and agrees instantly. Later in his room, as he flips through books, Alan can't stop thinking about the entity that appeared with Tina and what it might be causing. He knows he needs to investigate further. The next day, Mr. Graham leads Alan and the girls to a new area in the greenhouse, reserved just for their magic training. Alan looks around, impressed. Without wasting time, he asks Tina to try activating a spell. She focuses, and suddenly, a massive ice pillar shoots out so strong it pierces the greenhouse ceiling. Alan is stunned by her power, thinking something inside her is amplifying her strength. And thanks to the mana link, it feels like Tina picked up some of his control over magic. He steps closer, praises her achievement, and says, "From now on, we'll work on helping you control all that power, okay?" With tears in her eyes, Tina leaps onto him, crying with joy for finally being able to use magic. Alan smiles, pats her shoulder, and says, "That was all you, Tina. Congratulations." Ellie, watching, also tears up and hugs her friend, overjoyed by her progress. Alan looks at the two and says, "With a little more training, you'll be ready for the Royal Academy in no time." He turns to Mr. Graham and says he needs to inform Duke Walter about this. But the butler, with a serious tone, replies that the Duke has been missing for a while. Later, in the quiet of his room, Alan picks up pen and paper and starts writing a letter to his old professor. After a few hours, a postal griffin arrives and delivers the message. As soon as the professor receives it, a friend of Alan appears, curious, asking how he's managing. The two read the letter together, laughing out loud when they see Alan called the professor the sixth most likely to drown in gambling debt. They get a good laugh, but also see that Alan is doing a great job with the girls. In the letter, he urgently requests military-grade scrolls with anti-ice barriers due to Tina's unstable magic. The professor and his friend exchange a proud glance, happy with their pupil's growth. Back in his room that night, Alan dives into books trying to figure out what that mysterious entity was that appeared with Tina. He flips through page after page, intrigued, and starts noticing a strange mark in some of the books. "It's like someone knew I'd dig into this," he thinks, suspicious, as if the name Mark mentioned in the texts had left a trail on purpose. The next day, during training, Alan calls Ellie to try using her dark magic. When she freezes on the first attempt, he adjusts his glasses and says calmly, "Close your eyes, picture the magic in your mind, and move forward gently." With his guidance, she succeeds, and a satisfied glow crosses her face. Then he turns to Tina. "Your turn, let's go." She tries, but as expected, the magic comes out too strong, and another ice column flies up, piercing the ceiling again. Alan scratches his head and says, "Tina, you need to focus on holding your mana. You're spending too much energy." He praises Ellie's progress and says she's ready for more practical training. Tina crosses her arms, sulking, and complains, "You're way too soft on Ellie. You could go easier on me, too." Alan sighs, trying to explain that with her kind of magic, he can't go easy, but Tina's not buying it, calling him unfair, cruel, and a teacher's pet for Ellie. Her behavior reminds Alan of Lady Lydia, and he finds himself wondering how she's doing, since it's been a while since they last exchanged letters. The girls notice that Alan's mind is elsewhere and start pressing him. "What are you thinking about, Master? Come on, tell us." Before he can answer, Mr. Graham appears, eyeing the scene with suspicion. Later, the butler begins training with his granddaughter, Ellie, while Tina explains to Alan that the walkers train every day to serve better. Alan congratulates Ellie on her dedication, and then calls out to Tina. This time, she manages a much more controlled spell. It's not perfect, but the progress is clear, and Alan gives a proud smirk. Later, talking with Mr. Graham, Alan remarks that the girl's progress is impressive and says he urgently needs to speak with Duke Walter. The butler dodges, claiming the Duke is very busy. Alan frowns, suspicious. "Feels like he's avoiding me. Tell me something, Mr. Graham. Do you know what these marks in the books are? Who did they belong to?" The butler shrugs and says he has no idea. Back in his room, Alan dives into the books again, researching the so-called iceberg, but is interrupted by knocks at the door. It's the girls, looking like they haven't slept a wink. "We're scared, Master. We can't sleep. Can we stay here?" He sighs, serves them each a warm glass of milk, and tells them to head back to their rooms after they finish. But when he turns around, he finds both of them passed out on the sofa, sleeping like angels. Alan smiles and murmurs to himself, "I hope you two make it to the Royal Academy together." The next day, during training, Mr. Graham informs Alan that the Duke wants to see him. Alan heads to the Duke's office, who gets straight to the point. "I've decided Tina won't take the entrance exam." He offers vague excuses, clearly hiding something. Alan doesn't let it slide. "Duke, Tina has improved so much. She's got the potential to enter the academy." He mentions the marks in the books, revealing he discovered they were written by Tina's mother, Duchess Rosa Wow, who was trying to help her daughter master ice magic. The Duke hesitates but eventually relents with one condition. The girls will have to face an experienced sorcerer in a final trial to prove what they've learned. Alan returns to the girls and explains the challenge. They get nervous at the thought of fighting someone so skilled, but he smiles. "You can do it, I know you can. I'm really proud of you." The girls blush, a little embarrassed but motivated. Alan resumes training, confidently blocking attacks as the girls prepare for the big test. Ellie launches her dark magic at the boy, who blocks it effortlessly and traps Alan's feet with a spell. Both Ellie and Tina think they've got the upper hand. Alan watches their coordination, impressed by their teamwork, but notes they still need to stay focused on the opponent. With a quick move, he thaws his feet and escapes the trap. The girls attack together again, but the boy blocks easily. Wanting to teach them a lesson, Alan summons a dense cloud, catches them off guard, and defeats them both with ease. He praises Tina's trap and Ellie's close-quarters combat, which is improving every day, but warns them, "You still have a lot to learn." Alan explains that in the final exam, they'll face a powerful sorcerer chosen by Duke Walter, someone capable of using advanced spells. "You need to give it your all," he says, serious. Since time is short, he urges them to make the most of every second for training. The girls nod, determined, and promise to give it their all to get into the Royal Academy. After an intense training session, they go for a bath, excited about the challenge. Tina tries to reassure Ellie, "Relax, it'll be fine." Ellie tells her that her grandparents, Graham and Shelley, always trained her in martial arts, something common for those who serve House Howard. Then she turns to Tina and says, "They always said how amazing you are." Tina smiles, shy, and replies, "The amazing one is Alan. He helped me awaken my power." The two hug, promising to enter the academy together. Ellie, exhausted, ends up fainting after spending too much time in the pool. Alan uses a spell to dry both girls' hair, something he used to do a lot in the past. The girls, with a hint of jealousy, want to know who he's done that for before. He laughs and explains, "For my sister, Karen." Alan proudly shares that Karen is currently at the academy, and that if they pass, they'll see her often. "She's older than you two, but she's really nice, I swear." The next day, Alan proposes a challenge. If they can land a hit on him, they win the session. During the practice, he notices Ellie is getting stronger. Tina launches her ice spells, and Alan dodges with some difficulty, realizing she still can't fully control her magic. The two combine their attacks, and Alan assumes it's just a diversion, but Tina appears from above with a spell. He dodges, but then a blow from below catches him off guard. In the end, the girls defeat him, cheering. They want to train more, but Alan tells them to hold back. "Don't burn yourselves out. Save your energy for tomorrow's exam." At night, Alan continues researching the ice phoenix he saw flying. Suddenly, Tina appears at the door, saying she can't sleep and came to talk. She says she thought about checking the greenhouse plants for inspiration before the exam, but saw his light on and decided to come in. Worried, she asks, "What if we don't pass, Master? We won't get to go to the capital." Alan smiles confidently. "You'll do great, Tina. I'm sure you'll get into the academy." Tina brightens up but hesitates, as if she wants to share something. She opens her heart. When she was little, her mother used to read her stories full of heroes casting amazing spells. There was the Flaming Lion, the Fire Clin, the Jade Bird of Healing, the Storm Kingfisher, and the Ice Crane, an extinct bird that freezes everything. Tina believes those legendary spells are real, and that's why she wants to go to the Royal Academy, to prove her mother's stories were true. Embarrassed, she admits Alan is the first person she's ever told this to. He thanks her for the trust, with a gentle smile. Alan pulls a book from the shelf and comments that, over the past few months, he's come across several notes on ice magic formulas, all bearing the same mark. Tina's eyes widen in recognition. "That's my mother's mark!" Alan never met Duchess Rosa Wow, but seeing those notes, he realizes how much she cared for her daughter. The formulas he's been teaching all came from her books. Tina, moved, starts crying and throws herself into Alan's arms, promising, "Tomorrow I'm gonna win and get into the academy." On the day of the exam, they arrive at the hall where the big battle will take place. Alan looks at the girls, and with a firm tone says, "Stay calm. You've got this. Together, you're unbeatable." Suddenly, Ellie's grandmother appears holding something in her hands. She approaches and asks Alan to stay in the stands and just observe, without interfering. Before leaving, she hands Tina an old staff with engraved details and explains, "It belonged to your mother. She asked me to keep it safe and give it to you when you mastered your magic." She lowers her head, almost ashamed, and adds, "Sorry for not giving it to you sooner." Tina grips the staff tightly, her eyes shining with determination, and says, "I won't lose." The maid, tears in her eyes, smiles in relief for fulfilling Duchess Rosa's wish. She hugs them both and says, "Believe in yourselves and what you've learned. I want to see you shine." The girls turn to Alan and say, "Master, watch us. We're going to use everything you taught us." Alan smiles and wishes them luck. "Good luck, girls. Go get 'em." On the battlefield, their opponent appears, and Tina's heart almost stops. It's her father, Duke Walter. Ellie charges forward bravely, unleashing her dark magic and trying to land a hit, but the Duke blocks with a shield and easily throws her into the air. She doesn't give up. She chains a series of attacks and manages to knock him down momentarily. Tina joins the fight, summoning her ice power, but the spells slip right off her father like they're nothing. When Ellie nearly gets hit by a powerful blow, Tina pulls her back just in time, saving her. Together, they manage to trap the Duke for a moment, but a dark mist rises, and he blocks even their strongest attacks with ease, leaving them cornered. The Duke casts an ice spell that covers the entire arena, neutralizing Ellie's magic. The girls begin to weaken, but Alan shouts from the stands, lifting their spirits again. Tina takes a deep breath and, to Alan's surprise, uses an ice spell he never taught her. The two block the Duke's attack, gaining a second wind. They shout at him to give up, but he invokes the Howard family's supreme magic, an overwhelming power. The blast heads straight for Tina, who can barely hold a barrier. Alan leaps from the stands and reinforces her shield with his own magic, saving her just in time. The Duke looks at the girls impressed and says, "You're good, but now I'll finish this with my ultimate spell." He launches the attack, and the girls dodge at the last second, rolling across the ground. Exhausted, they consider giving up, but Alan yells, "Now girls, use everything you've got!" Tina tries to imitate her father's spell, but it's not enough. Then, she grabs the handkerchief that came with her mother's staff, presses it to her chest, and whispers, asking for strength. A wave of energy surrounds her, and she unleashes a power never seen before, defeating the Duke with a blinding ice strike that lights up the arena. Days later, Tina and Ellie prepare to leave for the capital. The Duke appears, his gaze softer, and says to Tina, "You fought like a true Howard. I was afraid to let you go, daughter. I didn't want to lose you." He hugs her, moved. Tina smiles and asks, Dad, take care of the greenhouse plants, okay? He chuckles, but replies thoughtfully, the greenhouse is too small for a tree as strong as you. I know I can't hold on to you forever. He turns to Alan and adds, I entrust my girls to you. Alan nods, promising to look after them at the Royal Academy. And so Tina, Ellie, and Alan set off for the Royal Academy, where a great future awaits them.